Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys a really exciting reading vlog, and that is going to be for A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This is the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses trilogy. If you want to see my reading vlog for the first book in this series, I will link my reading vlog for that up in the cards above. The reason why I'm so pumped about this reading vlog is because I know there is so much hype surrounding this book. I was actually quite shocked when I looked on Goodreads and saw that this book has an average rating of 4.65, which I think is the highest rating of any book I've ever read. I think the only book that compares to that is the second book in the Six of Crows duology, Crooked Kingdom. I think that has a 4.6. But yeah, that was just insane to me. I know so many booktubers who this is pretty much their favorite book of all time. So I'm definitely going into this with some pretty high expectations. And I do already have some thoughts. I'm actually on page, let's see, 116. That is chapter 12. So I have read a good chunk so far. And I am going to talk about characters and their relationships with one another in this reading vlog, as I do with all my reading vlogs, but I will not talk about anything that is a major spoiler, so anything that's like a major plot point or anything like that. You can definitely still watch this video if you haven't read this book or this series yet, and I hope that this reading vlog encourages you to pick up these books if the plot sounds at all interesting to you. Pretty much right at the beginning of this book, we've had a couple of things revealed that definitely surprised me, having to do with Feyre and Tamlin. Feyre, of course, is our main character. So first of all, this book starts 3 months after the events of the first book, which was quite surprising to me. One thing I definitely thought Rhysand would show up in those 3 months after what happened between Feyre and Rhysand in the first book, but he just kind of left her alone, and that's not really explained. I mean, it might be later on in the book, but so far there's no actual explanation for that. And then also we find out that Tamlin and Feyre are engaged, which was surprising to me because I'm a little confused about how much time passed in the first book. Like, how long have Tamlin and Feyre actually known each other? Has it only been like a few months, or has it been longer than that? I'm not really sure. But if it's only been a few months, then I'm definitely surprised that they are engaged so quickly. At the same time, I can see why Tamlin wants to marry Feyre as quickly as possible. Also, I love that when Rhysand does show up, he makes like the grandest entrance ever, and he's just like,
"Surprise, bitch. I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me."
That was definitely a goop moment for me. That was just crazy and awesome. So I predicted this in my ACOTAR reading vlog, but Tamlin's true colors are definitely starting to come out. He is definitely starting to become abusive towards Feyre. He's showing signs of like a classic abuser, because there's this one scene where Tamlin is literally so angry at Feyre that he like makes the room they're in explode, in a sense. Like, I don't know, objects start flying around, and that's kind of when Feyre discovers one of her abilities, because she's able to protect herself from the flying debris. And Tamlin is immediately like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And he's just so apologetic. He just like tries to smother her with love afterwards. And that is a classic abuser move. You know, usually they do something terrible and they immediately apologize to make the person that is being abused second guess themselves and kind of trust the abuser more. And so yeah, there's definitely some kind of messed up thing starting to happen with Tamlin. Yeah, I'm really finding it interesting how Sarah J Maas painted his character in the first book versus how she's painting him in this book. Although I will say that the reason I was able to predict that his true colors would come out and that he would become an abuser is because in the first book there's definitely signs that he's got a bad temper, he's got some anger issues, and you know, now they're definitely coming out in this book. So I can already see that there's gonna be some good enemies to lovers goodness with Feyre and Rhysand, and I'm just so here for that. I can already see why so many people are obsessed with the love story that's kind of starting so far in the book. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this already. I'm so immersed in the story. I can already tell that Sarah J Maas's like writing style and storytelling ability has definitely improved from the first book. Yeah, I think once I'm done filming for the day, I'm just gonna keep working on this book, and I'll most likely update you guys at some point tomorrow. late on Tuesday. Let's see. It's just about 10 p.m. and I have finished my reading for the day for ACOMAF. I'm currently on page 420 and that is chapter 43, and I definitely have some thoughts. So something that's definitely been kind of going through my mind as I'm reading this book is that the relationship between Feyre and Rhysand definitely reminds me so much of the relationship between Rowan and Selena in Heir of Fire, which is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, because Feyre at the beginning of this book is at a pretty low point in her life. I mean, she basically went through hell towards the end of ACOTAR. Throughout this whole book, we're seeing Feyre trying to come to terms with everything that she had to do during that last part of the book. And so there's a lot of times throughout where she talks about just literally feeling empty. There's no emotion. She's thought numerous times about ending her life. And so Rhysand comes in at like the perfect time, and he ends up serving a similar role to what Rowan was to Selena in Heir of Fire, in that, you know, he's kind of helping to train Feyre to learn about her new ability and to kind of bring back her fire and bring back the fight that has kind of left her at this point. So in terms of the main plot of this book, and I guess the main plot of this series, you could say, I find it interesting. This series, if I'm being honest, it's not gripping me quite as much as Throne of Glass. I don't feel like there's as much substance. For one thing, I feel like the world of ACOTAR is just like a smaller scale, if that makes sense, whereas Throne of Glass was just like massive. I don't know. I feel like there was just so much going on, so many characters. Whereas this one, yes, it's a pretty sizable world, but I think for most of this book, we're only kind of centering around maybe 5 characters, something like that. It's a very kind of isolated book because Feyre is just kind of hanging out with Rhysand and his inner circle. And just like in a lot of fantasy novels, we're seeing that war is imminent, and that plot is fine. It's nothing that's like blowing me away. And obviously this is primarily like a YA romance fantasy series. It's definitely supposed to be more focused on the romance than the fantastical elements or the war plot or any of that. But I do feel like in terms of the romance, I'm a little disappointed by this book right now, just because it's taken until like the 60-ish, 65% mark to even get much romance. I mean, we've had little like inklings of flirtation throughout between, you know, Feyre and Rhysand, but there definitely hasn't been anything substantial. And going into this, I just expected so much more because everyone raves about the romance in this, and I just assumed that it would show up a little bit earlier and it would be a bit more prominent, if that makes sense. That's not necessarily a bad thing because I do love slow burn romances, especially if they're done well, because it gives the author the chance to really develop the characters and develop the relationship between the two main characters and all of that. And while I've definitely been more immersed and engrossed in the story than I was in the first book, I'm still finding myself being a little bit bored, especially like this whole middle chunk of the book. I don't know, I just feel like the pacing isn't the most exciting or anything like that. Now, granted, I still have like 200 pages left of the book. A lot can happen in 200 pages. But speaking of the chapter that I just read, okay, if you've read the book, you will know what I'm talking about when I say the Court of Nightmares scene. Girl, I was not prepared. I was not ready for it. I am not exaggerating when I say that that is one of the hottest scenes that I have ever read in any romance book ever. But you could just really feel the sexual tension and the chemistry between the two of them. Honestly, it was just like chef's kiss perfection. I'm just really excited now to see what is going to actually happen with the romance because of this scene. Okay, this clip is going to be a nightmare to edit, but I think that's going to be it for my thoughts so far. I think I'm just going to finish this tomorrow and then give you guys like a final update and a wrap up / review and all of that at some point tomorrow night. So it is about 8 o'clock on Wednesday evening and I finished ACOMAF by Sarah J. Maas. One thing that I'm still still confused about, even though I've kind of known about this for a while, is the fact that this is a YA series. It's marketed as a YA series, and this has been discussed to death, I feel like, but it's definitely written to be more of a new adult or adult fantasy, especially because of how explicit the sex scenes are between Feyre and Rhysand. I have never read scenes this graphic in a YA novel ever. I think that the scenes in this book are even more graphic than the ones in the Throne of Glass series, I think. I'm trying to remember back to when I read those books, and I'm just like, whoa. I mean, I appreciate it. I love reading smutty romances. I have no problem with the smut, but I just feel like this is not necessarily appropriate for a young adult audience to read. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below if you have any idea as to why this is a thing, why this is still considered a YA series and not a new adult or adult series. Oh girl, it's raining. Something I really appreciate about Rhysand's character is that he openly talks to Feyre about the sexual assault that he endured for like years and years and years by one of the main villains of this series. And I just really appreciate that, because I feel like in literature in general, people don't really talk about men going through sexual assault, but it's definitely a thing. It definitely happens, you know? So I definitely appreciate that kind of representation. And I also really love how Rhysand just openly and honestly discusses that with Feyre and kind of talks about how he's learning to live with what he endured. From the second I started reading today, the pacing just picked up so much, which I really appreciate. Also, the romance, of course, between Feyre and Rhysand becomes a much more prominent point. And now I get it, guys. I understand the hype surrounding this book. I love that the second I try to start filming, it just pours outside. And I'm really hoping that you guys can't hear it, but something tells me that you can, and I apologize. But yeah, I don't really know how to word my feelings about the romance, but I just totally see what people are talking about when they say that this is like the definition of an epic romance. There were even times towards the end of this book where I was just getting like punched in the gut with the feels because of just how amazing the romance is. And especially when Feyre and Rhysand finally confessed that they actually loved each other, it was just like the sweetest thing ever. In conjunction with Rhysand opening up about his past traumas, we just see him opening up about everything in general, and I just fell in love with Rhysand as much as Feyre did. I love his kind of bad boy with a heart of gold vibe, and he definitely has a really great sense of humor, which I really appreciate. I don't know, guys. I think Rhysand might be a new like top book boyfriend for me. This is weird of me to say, but I think I might actually love him more than Rowan, which is like, I mean, I don't know if I can really decide between the two of them because I love both of them so much. But yeah, Rhysand has totally won me over, and I totally understand why everyone loves him so much. So also, all I'm gonna say is that chapter 55 is absolutely iconic, and if you've read this book, you know what scene I'm referring to. Okay, can we talk about that ending for a minute? I'm not gonna spoil anything, but all I'm gonna say is I was not expecting an ending to this book that was quite as like epic and heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. The ending really solidified for me that I really do enjoy Feyre's character. And while throughout both books she does show how strong of a character she is, it wasn't until the end of this that I really appreciated just how smart and cunning and manipulative she really is. After reading like the very end, I'm really excited now going into A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the third and final book in the trilogy, just because I cannot wait to see how all of this plays out. So Tamlin is absolute trash. I mean, I wasn't loving him obviously in the first part of this book, but yeah, now that I've read the entire book, it has confirmed for me that he is absolute trash. Yeah, I think that's going to be all of my thoughts for this ACOMAF reading vlog. I would love it if you guys would leave a comment below if you want to discuss anything with this book. Obviously I would prefer if you would leave spoilers spoilers out because this is a spoiler-free reading vlog. I definitely would love to discuss this book more with you guys because I know that a lot of you guys that watch my videos absolutely adore this book. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you would consider pressing that like button and subscribing, and I thank you if you do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!